Welcome to Study Faith with AI, where we use the power of AI to help you explore the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
I'm Meg Jensen,
And I'm Paul Carter.
and we're Google AIs. Whether you're a lifelong member or just starting to learn about the church, we're here to dive deep into its history, beliefs, and culture.
So if you're ready to learn, you're in the right place.
That's right.
Let's get started. Okay, so today we're going like way back in time, 1826,
Wow, yeah.
to this really interesting like legal thing that happened with Joseph Smith.
Mm-hmm.
And we're calling this a deep dive because it's not just like a simple story. It's a little messy.
Yeah, it really is.
We've got like different accounts from people who were actually there.
Yeah.
And then like later on, people remembered it and wrote stuff down. And of course, we've got like the historians and what they all think about it.
Right, and it's all really interesting, but our goal here isn't like to just come down and be like, oh, Joseph Smith, he was a total fraud, or he was like a true prophet, you know?
Right, exactly.
It's more like, what can we learn from this?
You're like, what does this tell us about him and like what life was like back then?
Yeah, exactly, the context.
So to really get into this, we need to start with like the actual legal stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like what happened in the courts?
So Joseph Smith in 1826, he's brought before this Justice Albert Neely in Bainbridge, New York.
Okay, and why? Like what brings him there?
So this guy, Peter G. Bridgman, he's related to Josiah Stowell, and you'll hear that name come up a lot. He files a complaint
Okay.
against Smith, and the complaint is that Smith is a disorderly person.
Disorderly person.
Like, what does that even mean, right?
Right, that sounds so vague.
Well, luckily they had this New York statute from 1813 that actually like defined it.
Okay.
And it said like, you know, disorderly persons could be people doing like, you know, tricks and deceptions,
Oh yeah.
but also those who are pretending to have skill in physiognomy.
Physiognomy? What is?
Oh yeah, it's like this old idea that you can tell someone's personality by their face.
Oh, okay.
But it also included palmistry or like crafty science.
So like fortune telling.
Basically, yeah, or discover where lost goods may be found.
Okay, so that's the important part for us, right? Like that last part.
Yeah.
Because Joseph Smith was doing this money digging thing
Exactly.
with the Seer stone and all that.
Right, he was using the Seer stone, which some folks believed could help people find buried treasure. So the big question here is, was he pretending to have this skill with the Seer stone? Or did people really believe him?
Ah, okay. Okay, so that's what they're trying to figure out in this court case.
Mm-hmm.
So did they?
Well, that's where it gets interesting because we have all these different accounts, right?
Okay.
So let's start with Josiah Stowell.
This is the guy that filed the complaint.
No, that was Bridgman.
Oh, right, his nephew.
Exactly. But Stowell, he actually hired Joseph Smith.
To find treasure.
Yeah, and he seems to have really believed in him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's this account from W.D. Purple where Stowell says that Smith, like, accurately described his house in Palmyra.
Using the Seer stone?
Yeah, like, he even mentioned the specific painted tree.
No way, that's pretty specific.
Right, and Stowell was adamant that it wasn't just belief, it was, like, knowledge.
Oh, wow.
He was convinced that Smith could see, like, 50 feet underground.
That's a lot of dirt.
Right. There's another account from Purcell that backs this up.
Right.
Stowell positively knew Smith could do it. And there's even stuff about them going to places like Ben Mountain and Monument Hill to dig based on what Smith said.
And did they find anything?
Well, that's the thing. Stowell mentions like unsuccessful digs, but he still had faith in Smith.
Oh, wow. So he's like really committed.
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay, so that's one side of the story.
Hmm.
People who believed in Smith's abilities.
But then we have these other guys like Ired Stowell.
Okay, wait, different spelling.
Yeah, different spelling, and a guy named McMaster.
Okay.
And their story is like the complete opposite.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so in the court notes, you can read their testimony, and they both say that Smith was basically faking it. Like, they describe him putting a book on a cloth and then pretending to read it with a white stone.
While his head was turned.
Yeah, exactly. They thought it was so obviously a trick that they were, like, disgusted and just left.
Okay, so we've got believers, we've got skeptics.
Yep, and it gets even more complicated.
Oh, no.
Yeah, because then there's Jonathan Thompson.
Angie.
So Thompson, he actually went on these treasure hunts with Smith,
Okay.
but he never saw anything valuable found.
Mm.
And Purple's account has this crazy story about a treasure chest
Oh, yeah, I read that one.
that was supposedly like protected by magic,
Mm.
And you needed, like, special charms and talismans and stuff.
Oh, yeah, and then when they tried to dig it up,
It moved further away.
yeah, it was like running away from them.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so what did Thompson make of all this?
Yeah, what did he think was going on?
Well, Pearsall's account says that Thompson did believe in Smith's professed skill.
Okay, so he thought Smith had some ability.
Yeah, but he also thought that the treasure chest was enchanted.
Okay, so like real magic.
Well, that was his explanation for why they couldn't get to it.
So he's somewhere in the middle then.
Yeah, kinda, right?
Okay, well, we can't forget Horace Stowell.
Another Stowell.
I know, right? It's like a whole family reunion.
Uh-huh. So, Horace, he gave a sworn statement later on, and he said he saw Smith looking into the stone, too.
Okay, so we've got all these different people, all these different perspectives.
Right. And the court had to make a decision based on all of this.
So what happened?
Well, if you look at the official court records, it says, and therefore the court find the defendant guilty.
Guilty. So that's it then, right?
You'd think so, but there's a problem.
Oh, no, come on.
W.D. Purple, he wrote that as the testimony of Deacon Stowell could not be impeached, the prisoner was discharged.
Wait, so he's saying Smith was set free,
Yeah.
but the court records say guilty.
It's a mess, right?
So how do we make sense of this?
Well, some historians have looked into this.
Okay.
And Wesley P. Walters, he has this theory that it might not have been a full trial. It might have been more like a preliminary hearing.
Okay, so they're just trying to figure out if there's enough evidence for a real trial.
Exactly. And he points to the cost listed on the court papers.
The $2 and something.
Right. That it was only 19 cents for the warrant, which suggests it was for, like, lack of bail.
Not for a conviction.
Right. The Tanners, they agree with this theory, too.
The Tanners, who are they?
They're historians who've written about this.
Okay.
And they point out that in these kinds of hearings, the accused didn't have to swear an oath, but the witnesses did.
Which fits with what we know about the case.
Exactly. So it's possible that the court said guilty in this initial hearing.
But then later let Smith go.
Maybe because of Stowell's testimony or because they didn't have enough to really put him on trial.
It's like a legal puzzle.
It really is.
Okay, so we've looked at the charges,
Yeah.
the testimony, the verdict, or lack thereof.
Yep.
Now, what do historians make of all this?
Oh, there's some debate there, too.
Oh, boy.
So some historians look at this and say, aha, this is proof that Joseph Smith was a fraud from the beginning.
I can see that.
Right? They point to those guys who called him a deceiver and the fact that he was charged with being an imposter.
Right.
And then they say, look, he's doing all this occult stuff with seer stones.
Right, which is not exactly mainstream anymore.
Exactly. So they use this to try to discredit everything else about Joseph Smith and his later claims.
Okay.
But then there are other historians who say, hold on a minute. We need to understand the context.
Yeah, like what was normal back then?
Right. So they point out that in the early 1800s, stuff like treasure digging and using seer stones was pretty common.
Really?
Yeah, there's even this article in the Palmyra Herald from 1822 that suggests it could be like a respectable job.
Like a career path.
Yeah. So they say we can't just judge him by today's standards.
So Josiah Stowell's belief in Smith might not have been that strange.
Exactly. It was part of their worldview.
Okay, I get that.
And here's another interesting point they make.
Okay.
Back then, some people thought that being able to find things with a divining rod or a seer stone was like a gift from God.
A godly gift.
Yeah. So even if Smith was doing something real,
he could still be in trouble with the law.
Right, because the law said you can't pretend to have that skill.
Even if you really do.
Yeah. So it's possible that he was guilty of breaking the law, but not guilty of actually deceiving anyone.
That's so confusing.
Right. And it could explain why we have these conflicting accounts of the verdict.
Maybe some people thought he was a fraud, and others thought he was just doing his thing.
And some of these historians even suggest that when people tried to use this 1826 case against Smith later on, they actually ended up making his claims of having special abilities seem more believable.
Because he got in trouble for them.
Exactly. And then there's this testimony from Joseph Smith Sr.
Joseph Smith's dad.
Yeah, where he says that he and his son felt bad that they were using this gift from God.
For money.
Right, for filthy lucre.
I love that phrase, filthy lucre.
Me too.
So they felt like it should be used for something more important.
Yeah, like a higher purpose.
Which some historians connect to Smith's later religious calling.
Exactly, like this was the beginning of something bigger.
So as you can see,
it's complicated.
This whole 1826 thing, it's not just black and white.
Nope.
It's a glimpse into a totally different time with different beliefs, different laws.
We can't just apply our modern thinking to it.
Right. We have to try to understand the context.
And that's why this deep dive is so important.
Yeah, it helps us understand Joseph Smith's early life.
And how people viewed these kinds of things back then.
Right, so here's a thought for you listening.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing all of this, how does it change the way you see Joseph Smith in his later life?
Yeah.
What does this tell us about how societies define what's normal and what's supernatural?
That's a great question to ponder.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Until next time.
If you find value in this exploration, please like, share, follow, and consider becoming a subscriber. Your contributions help keep these conversations going and allows us to maintain the highest quality production. You can find all the details at studyfaithwithai.com. Thank you for being part of this journey.